There comes a moment, and it arrives slowly, when people around you stop asking how you are, not out of malice, but because somewhere along the way, you learned how to appear whole. You became functional, predictable, the one who always says, "I'm fine," even when you're not. And so, little by little, the world forgets you. Not like someone who erases, but like someone who simply stops noticing. Like old furniture in the corner of the room seen by all, but no longer truly observed. Silence settles not as emptiness, but as routine. You begin to live among absences. The absence of your name in others' mouths. The absence of touch with no agenda. The absence of questions with no objective. Your pain becomes inaudible, not because it stopped hurting, but because no one gets close enough to listen. What was once a vibrant soul has become a neutral presence, useful, quiet, available. You turn into a place people pass through, but never stay. A bridge, a wall, a shadow. There's a glass left on the counter, always washed, never used. That glass is you, fulfilling its purpose but never chosen, just waiting. And that waiting slowly carves into you a kind of fatigue that isn't sleepiness, nor physical pain, but an existential faint. A desire to quietly dissolve. Life continues, but you don't. You adapt. And in adapting, you begin to vanish, gracefully. Until one day, even you can't remember the last time someone asked, with sincerity, "And you? How are you?" You begin to notice something has changed when your presence no longer provokes questions, when you walk into a room and no one looks up, when the phone rings less, when messages arrive only out of need. You start becoming functional, and precisely because of that, invisible. People still call on you, but always to solve, never to feel, never to ask if you slept well, if you cried in the afternoon, if something inside you is silently collapsing. And so, little by little, you begin to keep everything to yourself. The world trained you to be discreet, not to burden, not to demand care. And you learned so well that now no one notices when you're unwell, because the smile still appears. The replies are still quick. The help is still offered. And the emptiness inside you keeps growing, like a room slowly emptied of furniture, of scent, of color, until only a window remains. And through it, life passes, but does not enter. You begin to question whether your pain is legitimate, whether you're exaggerating, whether the problem might be you. But deep down, something whispers, this isn't drama, it's absence. The absence of being seen, of being remembered without needing to shout, of being sought out not for what you offer, but for who you are. You long to hear a simple phrase, "I'm here," even if you say nothing. If this silence has also grown inside you, write in the comments, "I'm still waiting to be asked." Sometimes naming the void is already a way of beginning to fill it. There was a time when someone cared about your silence, when your absence stirred concern, when not replying to a message caused worry. But now, you can disappear for days, and everything remains the same. The world turns without you. Names are still spoken, just not yours. You become a quiet presence in the group chat, a static image on a screen, a name no one says out loud anymore. It's not rejection, it's forgetting, and somehow that hurts more. You begin to resemble those old houses on quiet streets, shuttered windows, a rusted gate, an overgrown garden. No one knocks, no one enters. People walk past every day but no longer notice someone still lives inside. And you are there, looking through the cracks, waiting for a gesture, a sign. Anything to remind you that you still belong to the world. But the days pass, and nothing changes. Time turns you into scenery. You get used to not being remembered, and slowly you start forgetting yourself. You stop telling your good news. You stop recording your griefs. There's no one to tell, no one to show. Joy becomes a whisper, pain, a murmur. You begin to lose interest in your own being, as if there were no more mirrors, no more ears, no more reflection in another's gaze. You start doubting your own emotional existence. as if feeling too much were a mistake, as if expecting care were a weakness. But deep down, there's still a thread, almost invisible, that connects you to an old hope. To be seen, not for what you do, but for who you are. There was a day, and you remember it, when you almost asked for help. The words rose to your throat but died on your lips. You glanced sideways, rehearsed the gesture, took a deep breath, and gave up. Because you saw that no one was truly there. Everyone too busy, too distracted, too certain that you always manage. The world had built around you an image of strength, and now it demands your silence as proof of maturity. But what no one sees is that even silence has a limit, and yours is near. That day you stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, looking for a trace of yourself that still reacted to pain, a sign that something in you wanted to resist. But all you saw was a functional face, clean, awake, composed, but empty. The cry for help became a sigh, the tears turned to silence, and night fell with no witness. You know no one is obligated to care for you, but still it hurts not to be cared for. Even when you understand it hurts. It hurts to see no one noticing your small daily surrenders, that no one asks if that laugh was real, that no one hears the echo of what stayed trapped between your chest and your throat. You're there, whole and invisible, like a tree blooming in a forgotten field, beautiful and alone. If this loneliness lives in you too, right? Today I almost asked for help. Because sometimes almost saying it is the first step to being heard. There is a moment, almost imperceptible, when tired of waiting to be asked, you decide to ask yourself. Not out of pride, not out of resignation, but out of care. Out of the urgent need not to vanish completely. Out of the quiet courage to sit with yourself even in the dark. You light a small flame, not in the world but inside. And there, even wounded, you listen. You ask yourself, how am I? And for the first time in a long time there is an answer. Not in words, but in contained tears, in gentle tremors, in a silence that is no longer empty, but present. You hear what no one else heard, what no one had the time, the patience, or the tenderness to ask. You listen to your own absence, and slowly you begin to call it back. You remember an old taste, a forgotten scent, a song that once made you feel whole, and you realize there are still living pieces inside you. There is still time, still a center that pulses, not to please, not to serve, but simply to exist, quietly, truthfully, bare. You look into the mirror and for the first time recognize yourself, not by what you do, but by simply being there, still whole, after everything. And that wholeness is the answer the world never learned how to ask. Even when no one else asks, I can still listen to myself. If something in this video touched a part of you no one else sees, allow yourself to linger here a little longer. Hold this moment as one protects an ember in the wind. Because sometimes, this is all we have. A brief instant of being heard in the middle of so much silence. In the comments, leave a trace of yourself. A weariness no one noticed. A sorrow you couldn't say. Or just one word that defines you today. Others will read it. And something invisible will begin to heal through shared reflection. Share this video with someone who's been smiling too much to hide how deeply they need to be asked. Subscribe to the channel if something in you still longs to be heard, even without knowing how to ask. Here the question doesn't need an answer. It only needs to exist. When you listen to yourself with tenderness and the world slowly begins to remember that you are alive.